So we've been talking a little bit about, if you were a basketball fan, a lot about, of course, what's gone on, the NBA championship, Oklahoma City Thunder winning. But really the story for us here, at least in Montreal, is the Canadians, the Montrealers, who are not only in the NBA, but on these championship teams competing against each other, which is, pretty impressive when you consider the Montreal, I think up until not that many years ago, wasn't exactly considered, a hotbed for, pro basketball talent. That obviously is changing. Which then leads to the question of, okay, let's say you're in Montreal. You know that every year there's an exhibition game, typically, right, held at the Bell Center. Those games, those exhibition games, tend to sell out. So there's a lot of interest already here. Thanks, I guess, in small part, or perhaps in large part, to the Toronto Raptors, the fact that they, of course, had a couple of good years, won a championship, and that spurs interest here. But now, with Montrealers reaching the level of, NBA, people are starting to wonder, does this mean perhaps Montreal could consider having its own NBA franchise? So let's talk about it. Josh Lewenberg is a TSN Toronto Raptors NBA beat reporter. He's on the line. Josh, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's sort of deal with this. First of all, the Toronto Raptors franchise has been incredibly successful, and obviously as a business, that's something people here would be looking at to go, okay, that could work in Montreal. Could it work in Montreal from what you know, from who you've talked to?
Well, even from what I've seen, because I've been in Montreal for some of those preseason games that you mentioned, and the atmosphere is always incredible. The building sells out like almost immediately, I believe, every time the Raptors have played there, or there's been a preseason game there. It sells out in a couple minutes. And yeah, the atmosphere in the building is incredible, especially in the couple instances where Chris Boucher has been back with the Raptors and the ovation that he's gotten. Now, I do think, and I always say this not specific to Montreal, but in any market where there's a preseason game, they don't have a regular season team, they sell out right away. It's a great environment. I've been to games in Vancouver and Victoria as well, and those have always gone well. There's a difference between being able to sell out a preseason game and being able to support a team over the course of a regular season, year in and year out, through the highs and the lows and all of that. And that's what the NBA is going to have to determine at some point, I would say, in the near future. Adam Silver did an availability recently where he addressed the possibility of expansion. It's something that he speaks on regularly because that's obviously such a big question. I think at some point, probably in the next decade, we'll see them add another couple teams, go to 32, just like the NFL. And he did mention Canada specifically as one of the markets that they can look to maybe get more out of. And I do think Vancouver, getting a team back in Vancouver, and Montreal are probably the two teams, the two cities that they would be looking at in terms of Canada. Now, obviously, you zoom out and there's getting a team back in Seattle and Las Vegas probably at the top of the list, as well as a few other places. So it's definitely a conversation, an ongoing conversation at the NBA level. And I would say probably at some point in the next few years, they're really going to have to start exploring exploring how it would work in various markets. And I think Montreal is one of those markets that they've got to seriously look at.
So, we talk about in this city, they're still lamenting. We still lament. I'm one of them. The loss of the Expos right back in 2004 and think, well, we should bring baseball back. We know that Major League Baseball wants to expand. The one obvious difference, of course, is here to bring a team, you need to build a stadium. And that's a huge chunk of money, right? Which maybe turns some investors off. Every time I bring up the idea here on my show, people are like, no, I don't want my tax dollars going to that. Okay, fine. The difference, of course, with an NBA franchise is you don't need to build a stadium. You can use the stadium we already have where the Habs play. It's not about 60,000 people or 40,000 people. It's maybe about 15 to 20,000 people. And to your point, yeah, an exhibition game, it's just one game. You're talking about, 41 home games if you're in the NBA? That's a lot of people to come out on a regular basis, but you don't have to fill the building every game. I mean, are there any, from what you know, are there any weak sort of sisters in the NBA right now in terms of franchises?
Relocation seems unlikely at this point. There hasn't been anything that's come up recently. It's good news for the NBA in the sense that all 30 of their franchises seem to be pretty strong right now, and obviously the league as a whole is doing really well, in large part because of their new TV deal. Like I said, I think if and when we talk about a new team, a new city joining the fraternity, it's going to be expansion, probably more likely than relocation. And then obviously you're adding two teams instead of just the one.
Yeah. I will point out, by the way, and I know I didn't mention this, but as I talk about the NFL, of course, is expanding to Europe, right? They play there every year. There's a game or two in Europe, which ultimately, I guess, leads to maybe a world league, which might make sense. It seems to me basketball has an even bigger footprint when you consider, you watch Olympic basketball, for example, there's pretty good competition, not from European teams alone, from Asian teams too. So maybe that's the next step for the basketball, for professional basketball to expand that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that they've looked at as well and have talked about, and something that they've experimented with as well, because in addition to having this ongoing Canada series where they host annual preseason games throughout Canada, is they're also hosting games in Europe and in Asia. They've gone all over the globe, and it's something that makes a whole lot of sense, to your point, where the market, the fan base, is huge, and the game is global now more than ever. I mean, it has been for a long time, and it's certainly been trending in this direction, but we see almost every summer an international competition, whether it's the Olympics last year or the World Cups. There is more competition than ever before. There is more pressure on the United States than ever before because of all these teams, all these countries that can challenge them. And then certainly when you look at the talent in the NBA right now, and this is a fitting conversation to have a couple days after Shai Gilgeous-Alexander becomes the fourth player in NBA history to win the scoring title, MVP, NBA championship, and the Finals MVP, obviously the first Canadian to do it. You look at the players that are having major individual success in the league right now. The last several MVPs, all international players. I mentioned Shea, but then obviously Jokic and Giannis, and the list goes on and on and on. So, yeah, it's a good problem to have, I think, when the NBA does really consider expansion, is they're going to have a lot of different cities and a lot of different markets, potentially countries, to really strongly consider.
Well, let's hope we're one of them in Montreal. I have 30 seconds here. I just want to ask, with respect to how much a franchise goes for now in the NBA. So like I heard the other day, of course, the Dodgers are being sold for, what is it, $10 billion? What's an NBA franchise worth, do you know?
Not at the top of my head, no. But that, is a big figure that the Buss family is getting back for the Lakers, for sure.
Okay, was it the Lakers? No, the Dodgers. The Lakers were sold, right?
Yeah, the Lakers, the Buss family.
Same own. Okay,
$10 billion for the Lakers.
For a basketball franchise.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be a problem. All right, Josh Lewenberg. Josh, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Take
anytime.
Good care. You bet. All right. So, by the way, that the Lakers, the family or the group that owns the Dodgers already are the ones buying the Lakers for a mere $10 billion. That's insane.